Bruce had always dreamed of making a difference in people's lives. Since childhood, he admired the work of healthcare professionals and nurtured the desire to one day become a nurse. His mother, Cecilia, always encouraged him to pursue this dream, even in the most difficult times. At 25, Bruce finally graduated in nursing. Full of expectations and idealism, he could hardly wait to put everything he had learned into practice. However, the job market proved more challenging than he had imagined. Without experience, Bruce found it difficult to secure a position in the city's hospitals. Then came an unusual opportunity. A caregiving agency was recruiting a nurse to care for a patient with advanced-stage Alzheimer's. The salary wasn't the best, but Bruce saw it as a chance to finally start his career and gain practical experience. Unfortunately, just before taking on this new professional challenge, Bruce suffered a devastating blow. Cecilia, his greatest supporter and safe haven, passed away suddenly due to a cerebral aneurysm. The loss left an immense void in the young nurse's heart. Engulfed in grief, Bruce considered giving up on everything. But something inside him said that his mother would not want to see him abandon his dreams. Thus, with a broken heart, but determined to honor her memory, he decided to move forward and accept the job as a caregiver. On the agreed day, Bruce arrived at his new patient's residence. The house was old, with an untended garden and peeling paint. When he knocked on the door, he was greeted by a frail-looking lady with disheveled grey hair and a distant gaze. It was Alice, his patient. "Good morning, Mrs. Alice. I am Bruce, your new nurse," he introduced himself gently. The elderly woman looked at him with a confused expression. "Nurse? But I'm not sick," she replied, clearly disoriented. The nurse felt a tightness in his chest. It was evident that Alzheimer's was already in an advanced stage. With patience, he explained again who he was and asked for permission to enter. She hesitated for a moment, but eventually relented. The interior of the house reflected the mental state of its resident. There was a thin layer of dust on the furniture, the curtains were closed, blocking the natural light, and various objects were piled up in disorganized heaps. Bruce took a deep breath, aware of the challenge ahead. In the first few weeks, the young nurse dedicated himself to establishing a routine and making the environment safer and more pleasant for Alice. He cleaned the house, organized the rooms, and created a schedule of activities to stimulate his patient's mind. She fluctuated between moments of lucidity and total confusion. There were days when she recognized Bruce and could maintain a coherent conversation. On others, she treated him as a stranger or confused him with people from her past. Despite the challenges, Bruce felt that his effort was worth it. Each smile from Alice, each small progress, like remembering something or completing a simple task, filled his heart with satisfaction. Gradually, he realized that she was a woman deeply marked by loneliness, living in a quiet house, filled only by the presence of caregivers hired by her niece. The niece, who took care of the payments and administrative aspects, never appeared to visit her, nor did other relatives. This neglect saddened him deeply. At the same time, caring for Alice brought Bruce an unexpected comfort. It was as if, in some way, he was filling the void left by the absence of his own mother, finding purpose in closeness and caregiving. One day, while tidying up the elderly lady's room, the nurse noticed a door leading to the basement. Curious and concerned about potential safety hazards, he decided to investigate. He carefully descended the stairs, lighting the way with his cell phone's flashlight. The basement was damp and dusty, full of boxes and old furniture covered with sheets. In the corner, an old wooden bookshelf caught his attention. On it, there were dozens of notebooks, organized chronologically. Bruce picked up one of the notebooks and opened it carefully. It was a diary. The yellowed pages contained Alice's delicate handwriting, narrating events from her life decades ago. Fascinated, he continued flipping through the pages, discovering that the diaries covered more than 50 years of his patient's life. Although hesitant to invade Alice's privacy, Bruce couldn't contain his curiosity. Perhaps those writings could help him understand her better and find ways to stimulate her memories. With this thought in mind, he began reading the oldest diaries. The first pages revealed a young Alice, full of dreams. She wrote about her studies, her friends, and her first love. Bruce smiled as he read about the adventures and discoveries of his patient's youth. As he continued reading, the tone of the diaries changed. Alice wrote about her marriage to Richard, who initially seemed to be the man of her dreams. However, the following pages unveiled a darker reality. Richard turned out to be a controlling and abusive husband. Alice narrated, with a mix of fear and shame, the episodes of physical and emotional violence she endured. Bruce felt his heart tighten with each painful account, which made him close the diary quickly. But the next morning, once again, Alice woke up screaming the name Marie. Driven by curiosity, he continued to read those diaries. What he discovered left him in shock. He began reading a diary that, amid the turbulent setting of Alice and her husband's marriage, revealed that she became pregnant. The birth of Marie, her daughter, was described as a ray of light in her dark life. However, Richard's behavior only worsened after the girl's birth. The following entries were distressing. Alice described her internal struggle between the desire to protect her daughter and the paralyzing fear she felt towards her husband. She repeatedly mentioned the desire to flee but always stepped back, overwhelmed by the fear of the consequences. Moreover, she lived in a time when society not only severely judged divorce, but also condemned women for the supposed failure of their marriages, intensifying her suffering and isolation even further. Then, in an entry dated on a rainy autumn day, Alice narrated the most difficult decision of her life. With a broken heart, she decided to leave Marie with her sister and flee alone. She believed that this way she could rebuild herself and one day return to retrieve her daughter. "My God," Bruce murmured, feeling a lump in his throat. He began to understand the burden his patient had carried for so many years. The following pages were filled with regret and frustrated attempts to reconnect with Marie. Alice described how she tried several times to get in touch, but always backed out at the last moment, fearing rejection from the daughter she had abandoned. Bruce closed the diary, feeling emotionally exhausted. Alice's story was a mix of tragedy and courage. He could not judge the choices she made under such difficult circumstances. In the days that followed, Bruce observed Alice with new eyes. He noticed how, in her moments of lucidity, she sometimes murmured the name Marie with an expression of deep sadness. Now he understood the meaning behind those moments. An idea began to form in his mind. What if he could help Alice reunite with Marie? It would be a difficult task, considering the time that had passed and Alice's current state of health. Moreover, there were no guarantees that Marie would be willing to reunite after so many years. Bruce hesitated. He knew that meddling with the past could bring unpredictable consequences. On the other hand, he felt that he had a unique opportunity to help his patient find some peace before it was too late. After much reflection, he decided that he would try. Not just for Alice, but also as a way to honor the memory of his own mother. If Cecilia were alive, he would like to have the chance to tell her how much he loved her one last time. Bruce began his search discreetly. Using the information from the diaries as a starting point, he started researching on the internet and on social media. He asked for help from fellow nurses and social workers, always careful not to reveal sensitive details. The task proved to be more challenging than he initially imagined. Marie seemed to have changed her name or gotten married, making her tracking difficult. Weeks went by without any significant progress. Meanwhile, Alice's health condition fluctuated. There were good days when she was able to recognize Bruce and even tell stories from her past. On other days, she became agitated and confused, requiring constant care. Bruce didn't give up. Every smile from Alice, every moment of connection, motivated him to continue. He knew that time was working against them, but he refused to give up hope. Finally, after months of fruitless searching, a promising lead emerged. Bruce found a woman whose profile on a social network matched the descriptions from the diaries. The name was different. She was now called Sarah, but the birth date and some details of her life story matched. With a racing heart, Bruce sent a carefully crafted message. He briefly explained who he was and the reason for his contact, apologizing for the intrusion, but emphasizing the importance of the matter. Days passed without a response. Bruce was beginning to lose hope when he finally received a notification. Sarah had replied. The message was short and charged with emotion. Sarah confirmed that she was Marie, Alice's daughter. Her words were a mix of shock, anger, and curiosity. She had grown up believing she had been abandoned by a mother who never cared, and dealing with this sudden information was challenging. Bruce responded with empathy, offering to talk over the phone and explain the situation in detail. To his surprise, Sarah accepted. The phone conversation was intense and emotional. Bruce told Sarah about Alice's health condition, the diaries found, and the story that led to the abandonment. For the first time, Sarah began to glimpse the reasons behind the silence that had surrounded her entire life. She had always wondered why she was abandoned, but her aunt never wanted to touch on the subject of her sister. All she knew was that the two had broken ties after Alice disappeared off the map. It was the aunt who, without explanation, changed her name to Sarah, and only years later revealed that she was not her mother. This discovery at the time left her confused and hurt, but the matter was buried in the same silence in which it was delivered. Now, hearing about Alice's past from Bruce's lips, Sarah cried. Her lifelong convictions crumbled with each word. The idea that her biological mother had suffered as much as she had, in ways Sarah had never imagined, shook the barriers she had built over the years. After hours of conversation, Sarah agreed to consider a meeting with Alice. Bruce, however, warned her about the advanced state of Alzheimer's, preparing her for the painful possibility that Alice might not recognize her. Even so, something in Bruce's tone, perhaps the genuine affection in his voice, made her see this meeting not just as a chance for understanding, but as a way to try to reclaim what both had lost. In the weeks that followed, Bruce prepared Alice as best as he could. He showed her old photos of Marie, told stories of her past, and tried to stimulate her memories. Alice had moments of clarity where she spoke about her daughter with emotion, but she soon returned to her confusion. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. Sarah entered the house hesitantly, her eyes scanning the environment with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Bruce welcomed her with a gentle smile, guiding her to the living room where Alice was sitting in her favorite armchair. Alice, Bruce called softly. There's someone here who came to visit you. Alice looked up, her gaze vague for a moment, then something seemed to awaken in its depths. Her eyes widened, focusing on Sarah. Marie? She murmured, her voice trembling. Is it you, my girl? Sarah stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Yes, Mum. It's me. For one brief and precious moment, the fog of Alzheimer's seemed to dissipate. Alice extended her trembling arms, and Sarah rushed to embrace her. The two women held each other in a decades-overdue embrace, sobbing and murmuring words of love and forgiveness. Bruce watched the scene, moved. He knew that this moment of lucidity probably wouldn't last, but the established connection was real and powerful. As expected, Alice's clarity soon faded. She looked at Sarah with confusion, asking who the pretty girl visiting her was. Sarah, though visibly shaken, maintained her composure, holding her mother's hand and speaking gently. In the months that followed, Sarah began visiting Alice regularly. Even on days when Alice did not recognize her, Sarah found comfort in being present, taking care of the mother who for so long she believed did not want contact. Bruce watched the evolution of this relationship with a mix of joy and melancholy. Seeing mother and daughter reconnected, even under these difficult circumstances, brought a sense of fulfillment. At the same time, he couldn't help but think of his own mother, wishing he had had more time with her. Alice's condition continued to gradually decline. There were fewer and fewer moments of lucidity, but when they occurred, They were filled with expressions of love and gratitude for Sarah and Bruce. On a quiet spring afternoon, Alice passed away peacefully in her sleep. Sarah was by her side, holding her hand. Bruce, who had arrived for his shift, found the two of them like this. In the days following the funeral, Bruce and Sarah grew closer, united by the shared experience. Sarah expressed her deep gratitude for what Bruce had done, not only for Alice but for her as well. "You gave us the chance to heal a wound I didn't even know was still bleeding," she said emotionally. Bruce smiled, feeling a mix of sadness and fulfillment. "Taking care of your mother helped me deal with the loss of my own mother," he confessed. "I think in some way we all found some healing in this process." This experience transformed Bruce profoundly. He discovered a vocation for working with the elderly, especially those with degenerative diseases. He understood that every person carries a complex story, full of joys and regrets, and that often all they need is someone willing to listen and understand. Bruce and Sarah kept in touch, developing a friendship based on mutual respect and gratitude. Occasionally they would meet for coffee and share memories of Alice. On one of these occasions, Sarah handed Bruce a small package. Inside was one of Alice's journals, along with a thank you note. "I thought you might like to have this," Sarah explained. "It's a reminder of the impact you had not only on my mother's life, but on mine as well." Bruce carefully flipped through the journal, recognizing Alice's delicate handwriting. In the last pages, he found an entry that made him smile through tears. "Today I met a young nurse named Bruce. There is something in his eyes that reminds me of someone I loved very much. I can't remember who, but I know he will bring light to my days." At that moment, Bruce knew he had found his true calling. He would continue to care for the elderly, listening to their stories, alleviating their pain, and, when possible, helping them make peace with their past. He would always carry with him the lessons learned from Alice, about forgiveness, about the complexity of the choices we make in life, and about how it's never too late to try to correct the mistakes of the past. And so, Bruce moved forward, carrying with him the memory of two extraordinary women. Cecilia, his mother, who taught him the value of compassion, and Alice, his patient, who showed him the transformative power of forgiveness and human connection. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.